Hey guys, and welcome to your next lesson in my wedding success plan. Okay, so we're still on tier 1, but the great news is that we have completed pre-planning. We're now moving on to venue and guests. So go ahead, grab your resources. They're down below this video, or get a notebook and a pen and let's get started. We're gonna start off with venue before we get into guests, but before we can do anything, I need you to write down these things. Now, we've already done this in the previous lessons. I've shown you how to calculate this, so you should know what your budget is for your venue. So go ahead and write that down first. Second, we've also discussed our date and time, and we've discussed locations. So if you have a few different location options, that's fine. It doesn't need to be one location, but go ahead and write down the location that you're thinking about for your wedding. You're then going to write down the guest count. And remember, we've also done this in the Imagine part of this lesson. We actually went through the resource sheet and you kind of had to put down what you think your guest size is going to be. So is it something that's 20 people, 20 to 50, 100 or more? That's what you're looking for. And then we're going to look at the venue style. So you're kind of thinking about what kind of vision, what is in your vision, what do you see, is it a beach, is it inside, that kind of thing. And then the last thing is your season. So which 3-month period of the year are you favoring? Is it going to be summer? Is it going to be autumn, winter, spring? Or is it a mix? Maybe you're open to all seasons, or maybe there's a specific season that you're like, absolutely not. So go ahead and put down the seasons that you're actually favoring. Now we're going to look at venue options so you can understand what I mean by outside or inside, or traditional or non-traditional. If you look at this venue here, this is basically in a church, and as you can see, it's very classic, it's beautiful, it's clean, but this is an inside, indoor type ceremony. Now if you remember in the previous video, I did say you don't actually have to have the exact same feeling, vibe, decor at your ceremony and your reception. So it's really up to you. But this is a place, for example, this venue is a church and it's indoors for the ceremony. Then the next item is actually, it's also beautiful. This is kind of like a deck. I guess you could call it a lapa or just a deck over the lake or the beach. I mean, essentially it's just the fact that you are outdoors and you are not undercover. This would be a barn kind of setup. I put this in because in another video I've given you my most favorite barn setting, which I absolutely loved. It was super beautiful, it was kind of rustic. This is kind of similar to that, but again, this one is indoors, and this is actually the reception we're looking at. This is not the ceremony. This is again the reception, and I suppose there could be a combination where you have your reception and your ceremony combined outdoors. That's something that you can absolutely do if you want, but this reception is outdoors. It's not under cover on the left, and then on the right you can see that there is cover in the form of a tent. Now let's talk about some venue tips, okay? Number 1, which is the most important tip, is stick to your budget. There's a reason that you did a budget. There's a reason we all have budgets in our lives, and that is because it's there to keep us in line. The budget is there to control you and help you to make wise decisions, because your budget was defined by yourself. It was defined by you and your partner and how much you can actually afford. So when you're looking for a venue, only consider venues that is within that budget. Look at venues that are actually falling in that category. If you can only afford a venue for 50,000, you should not be considering or looking or visiting venues for 100,000. Tip number 2, minimize travel time. Okay, so this is basically saying that if you're having a ceremony, if you're having a reception, and if you're having your accommodation be in 3 different places, you're going to have to travel between those places, right? Just logically, you have to travel. And so when you're looking for a venue, if you try to get a venue that has at least 2 of these things in the same place, then you're minimizing your travel time. If you find a venue that has everything in the same place, then that is eliminating your travel time completely. Okay, then the next point is to research your venue on a site such as theknot.com. Now, this is one of the most common websites used in the US. You would obviously look for the website in your country or in your area that is actually specific to you. The knot.com is American. So if you are, in South Africa or you're in Australia, then you would just go ahead, pop it into Google and try to find a website that is actually helping you sift through wedding venues. Chances are you're definitely going to find it because it is actually really popular to have websites like theknot.com. I do have a bonus video for those of you who are using theknot.com. Then you can actually go to my bonus video and watch how you would do it. I walk you through how you should use it, what you should look at, tips and tricks when using that website. So the next tip is to send emails to about 5 to 10 venues. So once you've done your research, you're going to have a list of venues that you actually think are appropriate and that you are considering. And off those venues, you're going to choose 5 to 10 of them and email them. And you're simply going to ask them for their quote, their brochure, any information that they have for weddings. So any offers that they're willing to give you. Do they have wedding packages? This is basically what you're going to ask them in an email. And again, there is a bonus video for those of you who have that. You can go ahead and watch that video. Okay, so if you had watched one of my bonus videos, you would have seen that I said to you, when you're actually researching your wedding venues, you're going to choose a range of venues. So say that your budget is 50,000, you're actually going to find places that are in the upper end of 50,000, in the mid-range, and then in the lower end. So maybe it's going to be 30, 40, and 50, for example. It could even be 10, 25, and 50, right? But these are the different ranges and the different types of venues. So you're going to find a mix of venues within these ranges, because ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to compare the value for money, and you're trying to compare these different venues to be able to make a choice. So when you start touring venues, you're going to choose 3 venues, 1 from each of those ranges, and then you're going to go and only tour those. So don't tour all the venues, and certainly do not make the massive mistake of going and looking at a venue that is over your budget, okay? Because that's a waste of time. You're really not going to be able to afford it, and you're just going to feel bad about it. So don't go and look at something on a higher budget and be disappointed and waste your time. Stick to looking at places that are within your budget and only compare those with each other. And a tip when you're touring is to make sure that you have a guided tour. So when you go ahead and see these venues, request that somebody shows you around. Possibly the venue would possibly have some kind of wedding coordinator that they hire to make sure that the weddings that they host go off okay, and to liaise with the couples, etc. So that's probably the person you're going to meet. And when you meet that person, if there is anything that they say that is included, you need to make sure that whatever is verbally agreed will be in your contract. Now we're going to go through the contract question Q&A just now, but I'm just drawing your attention to the fact that anything verbally communicated must be put into a contract if it is not there. And the last point, super, super important. You must read your contract. So do not sign anything immediately. Okay, if you can, I really encourage that you take the contract home with you. So say that you go through these 3 venues and you get a contract from each of these venues. Take all of them home and read them, especially if it is kind of close between you deciding between them, and you're trying to figure out how to decide what is the thing that is going to actually make one stand out. The contract can be a really good way to get that answer. It's a good way for you to see what one venue is willing to accommodate, or what one venue is costing you versus another in terms of cancellation or fees or damages. There's multiple things that you need to consider. Like I said, we're going to look at it next, but just keep in mind that you ideally should not sign your contract the same time. Just read it, take it home, take some time, go through it properly, go through it with a lawyer. Ideally, it should be somebody who is a lawyer, but if you can't, maybe just somebody in your family that is familiar with the terminology, or just go through it, together, where you can research and Google certain terms that they may be using, and then you can make a decision in calm, peace, and quiet, and then you can go back to the venue with the contract. So I'm going to end this part of the lesson here because this was more a discussion. And then in the next video, we are going to pick up and we're going to go through the venue Q&A and the contract checklist. So go ahead, get those resources ready, and I'll see you in the next video.